Shocking truth, why Paul claimed to be a slave at 40. The hidden revelation exposed. It was a scene straight out of a twisted nightmare. Paul stood at the center of the town square, shackles heavy on his wrists, a wild look in his eyes. The sun beat down, casting a harsh glare on the shocked faces surrounding him. Whispers floated through the crowd, words sharp and gasping. Could it be true? What does he mean? What drove a man to claim such a thing at 40? The air was thick with suspense, every second brimming with a potent mix of disbelief and horror. Everyone knew Paul as the local handyman, always there when a pipe burst or a fence fell. But this? This was a different story. It was said he had traveled to the deepest corners of America, chasing shadows until he lost himself to whatever darkness he found. His hands trembled as he recounted his tale, voice wavering like a fragile leaf in the wind. Memories flooded back, echoes of chains rattling, a life stolen, and a body forced into submission. A shiver rolled through the onlookers, they clung to the edges of his story, terrified and fascinated. The first strange element revealed itself as Paul spoke about a hidden world he had stumbled upon, where people like him were bound not just by physical chains but by palpable fear. Shadows flickered at the edges of his memories, half-formed figures lurking in the darkness, their faces a haunting blur. He spoke of a cult shrouded in secrecy that preyed on the desperate, a sinister grip pulling people into a life of servitude with promises that melted into nightmares. The crowd caught their breath, eyes wide with gripping terror. Then came the twist. Paul mentioned a name. A name that echoed like a ghost's whisper among those gathered. As he uttered it, the crowd leaned in, tension crackling like electricity. Raven, he stammered, a name that sent chills down spines because it was linked to an unsolved string of disappearances in town. Murmurs erupted, eyes darted to each other, searching for understanding. Who was Raven? A predator? A puppet master? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. His gaze turned distant, filled with raw emotion, and the crowd felt a collective tightening in their chests. It was as if he was staring into an abyss of pain and desperation. The whispers transformed into a cacophony of disbelief. How can this be happening? What if he is telling the truth? They were hanging on every word, fear nudging them closer. As Paul continued, shadows of the past loomed larger. He recounted harrowing moments, clenched fists and fast breaths, as if the chains were still binding him. Names dropped like stones, each a thread that tied him to this dark world. He finished abruptly, eyes wild. Someone needs to find Raven before it's too late. The air pulsated with mystery, leaving the townsfolk gripped by confusion and a chilling curiosity. Who was Raven? What did Paul really know? But then the questions lingered in the air, unanswered and heavy. Would anyone dare to search for the truth? Or would they let fear keep them locked in chains of their own? The crowd's murmur became a low hum, a chorus of anxiety and skepticism swirling around Paul. The sun hung precariously in the sky, mid-afternoon rays illuminating the sweat on foreheads and the uncertainty in eyes. Paul could feel the tension, a tide of fear washing over the gathered townsfolk. Some turned to each other, questions spilling out like water from a broken dam. But all eyes remained on him, keen for answers that would cut through the chaos. Paul stepped forward, the chains rattling, and tried to steady his breathing. His heart raced as he fought to dig deeper into the memories that clawed at his mind. Raven, he repeated, allowing the name to linger, as if summoning a dark spirit. She is like a phantom. You feel her presence, and then she is gone, taking pieces of people with her. Behind him, a newcomer emerged from the back of the crowd, Maggie, a skeptical but fiery local reporter, her eyes sharp as flint. How do we know you're not just trying to pull one over on us, Paul? Anyone can spin a tale. Her voice rose, cutting through the tension like a knife. Paul's gaze snapped to her, desperation painting his features. I don't expect you to believe me, Maggie, but what I'm saying is true. I was part of something sinister. Raven, his voice fell to a lower tremor. Raven controls everything. She's not just some crime boss. She's much worse. She lures you in, wraps you in a web, and the only way out is to become another shadow. The townsfolk moved closer, drawn in by his urgency. There was a mixture of skepticism and unwavering fear. The atmosphere cracked with disbelief. Could something so horrific be happening in their quaint little town? Maggie's brow furrowed as she met Paul's gaze, pondering the truth of his words. And how do we find her? The crowd leaned in closer, their curiosity piqued. A sense of urgency hung heavy in the air. It felt as if the ghosts of secrets untold were whispering just out of reach. Paul hesitated yet again, wrestling with the memories that replayed like a haunting film. There was a meeting in the woods, by the old quarry. Raven holds court there. If you want to find her, that's where you need to go. Gasps erupted from the crowd, tension spiking. But no one comes back from there. Exclaimed a voice from the back. It's cursed. Or so they say, Maggie quipped, her journalistic instincts igniting like a flame. But we need evidence. If there's even a chance Raven is involved, we owe it to ourselves to find out. The crowd buzzed with uncertainty, torn between fear of the unknown and the grim determination to uncover the truth. Paul fought through the din. You think I wanted this? To become a living cautionary tale? His voice was raw now, brandishing heartbreak and fury. I wasn't saved. I escaped, and I barely made it out with my life. Maggie stepped closer to him. Then we go tonight. Nightfall draped the town in a shroud of shadow and mystery. As the sun dipped behind the horizon, something darker began to stir in the night. Existential dread set in, not just for Paul, but for the townsfolk who suddenly felt the weight of their ignorance heavy upon them. Would they be brave enough to hunt down the truth? Or would fear keep them chained to inaction? And in that shadowy quiet, as night embraced the sky, a figure lurked, unseen, waiting for the moment to emerge. The sky deepened into inky black, and the chill of the night seeped into every corner of the town. Those who gathered around Paul now stared at the abyss of the woods ahead, the trees looming like sentinels guarding ancient secrets. Maggie stood, her breath visible in the cold, determination etching her features. We need to move. If Raven really holds a court there, we can't waste time. Paul shivered, but not from the cold. It's a trap, he murmured, dread spilling from his lips. A mixture of anger and fear ignited inside him. He had escaped, barely. What was so powerful about Raven that she could bend a whole town to her will? Then we'll be ready to fight, Maggie snapped back, her voice sharper than the cold air. I'm not letting fear dictate our actions anymore. As they made their way toward the old quarry, whispers rippled through the crowd. A local named Dean shook his head, eyes wide with fear. You really think you can face her? She knows everything. She'll know we're coming. Or maybe she won tea, Maggie shot back, her voice buoyed by resolve. With every step, shadows danced, twisting in the flickering light of their flashlights. The closer they got to the woods, the more unease coiled around their hearts. Paul could almost hear the whispers again, the lost souls of those who had ventured in before them. What if they were right? What if no one returned? The weight of the oncoming confrontation crushed down on him, tightening his chest. Soon they reached the tree line. The forest opened up before them, a gaping maw of tangled branches and thick foliage. Paul hesitated. Maybe we should just turn back. We could gather more people and come back later. A low growl erupted from the shadows, followed by a rustle that sent everyone jumping. A figure stepped into the light, a woman cloaked in shadows, her features obscured by darkness. The crowd gasped, backing away. You dare come here? She hissed. Paul's blood ran cold. It was Raven or a spectral projection of her, a figment to taunt him. "You're not welcome," he stammered, stepping protectively in front of Maggie. "Oh, but I am always watching, Paul," the figure taunted, her voice dripping with malice. "You think you can escape? I own you. You are my shadow, and shadows, dear Paul, cannot escape the darkness." A chill coursed through the crowd, tightening their grips on their makeshift weapons, eyes darting nervously. Dean muttered, "We should bail. This is madness. Do you want to prove the rumors true?" Maggie shouted, her eyes blazing. "This is the moment to fight together." Suddenly, the darkness around them stirred and shifted. Marked figures emerged from the woods, their faces hidden beneath dark hoods, moving with ghostly silence. "Those are her disciples," Paul breathed, recognition igniting a fear he thought he had buried. "She's been turning people." Maggie's breath hitched. "And they're here for us." The air thickened, heavy with impending doom as the cloaked figures advancing slowly toward the group, led by a woman whose presence seemed to dim the very light around her. "Join us, or face the consequence," Raven's voice echoed, drifting hauntingly through the night. Panic overtook reason as the group turned to run, but Paul felt something deeper pulling him back, a mix of defiance and an awareness of the chains he thought he had broken. "Wait!" he shouted, stepping forward against the tide of fear. "We can't run. Not again." The shadowed figures halted, and an eerie silence enveloped them. What would happen next could mean life or death, freedom or a return to the depths of darkness. Could Paul muster the strength within to unite the townsfolk against Raven, or was he too far gone? And as the last rays of daylight faded, something stirred behind the dark trees, something that wasn't quite human and wasn't quite alive, blocking their escape. The air thickened with tension as everything froze, an unwavering moment where the collective heartbeat of the crowd seemed to synchronize with the rustling limbs of the trees. Paul stood at the forefront, the shadows looming behind him, feeling the weight of the desperate eyes on his back. The only sound he could hear now was the thunderous thrum of his own pulse, a chaotic symphony that masked the whispers of doubt threatening to engulf him. The cloaked figures shifted slightly, their movements so deliberate they felt hypnotic, like a ritual dance. Paul squinted into the darkness, trying to discern their shapes. But it was no use. The night amplified their sinister aura, making them appear as twisted specters from a nightmare. "Are you truly ready to confront what lies beyond?" Raven's voice sliced through the silence, cold and calm. "You think you have the resolve to fight? You are nothing more than my pawn." Those words struck hard. Paul shivered as if someone had poured ice into his veins. He glanced at Maggie, and for a moment, their eyes locked, hers ablaze with courage, his flickering with uncertainty. Could he really rally them against this dark force? The fear of failure clawed at him. Together, Maggie mouthed, a vow unspoken yet heavy with meaning. But just as hope sparked, another growl shattered the moment, deeper and more guttural than before. It echoed through the woods, unsettling the earth beneath their feet. Paul flinched as the underbrush started to writhe, something massive pushing its way through the shadows. "Run!" someone screamed, breaking the stillness. But before anyone could turn, the thing emerged, a hulking figure with smooth, mottled skin that shimmered in muted silver under the pale moonlight. It wasn't human. Its eyes glinted with a predatory sharpness, and jagged teeth glimmered in a grotesque grin. The crowd recoiled, panic igniting, and they scrambled to escape. Paul held his ground, fear boiling into anger as he shouted above the chaos. "We can't let her win. If we fight back, if we unite." Maggie grabbed his arm, urgency radiating from her touch. "They'll surround us. We have to find a way out." As the beast lunged, clawed hands sweeping toward them, Paul felt the ground drop away beneath him. It was as if the darkness was alive, pulling him in, but the moment steeled his resolve. This was not the end, it was his chance. "No!" he yelled, thrusting his arm directly in the creature's path. Everything slowed as reality shifted. A blinding light erupted from his palm, illuminating the encroaching shadows. The beast hesitated, momentarily blinded, and Paul could feel the tremors of the ground shift with the astonishment of those around him. "What how?" A voice broke through the shock. It was Dean, wide-eyed and trembling at the edge of the group, disbelief written across his face. "Focus," Paul urged, adrenaline surging as he felt the power building inside. "Channel your fear. Fight back." With a roar that vibrated through the air, he turned to Maggie, his heart racing. "We can do this. Don't let her break us." The crowd faltered for a moment, caught between fear and the flickering hope ignited by Paul's unexpected burst of energy. And then it happened. The fear that had bound them started to dissolve. A couple of brave souls stepped forward, raising their weapons, glancing at each other with newfound resolve. But would it be enough to stand against Raven's dark grip? As the air crackled with energy around him, Paul sensed a shift, a wave of something powerful. The whispers began again, this time urging him forward, tying him to the very essence of the town he had known and fought to protect. "Together!" Paul shouted, feeling the weight of memories, the struggles, and the triumphs flowing through him. Their battle had only just begun, but the forest grew restless around them. From behind the tree line, a new wave of figures emerged, cloaked in shadows more than the original disciples, perhaps even the very essence of those lost in the dark. What were those forces that now threatened to consume them? Would they put up the fight of their lives or get swallowed whole by darkness once again? The night was far from over. The ground pulsed beneath them, the air thick with dread as the new figures emerged from the tree-line. They were a mass of shadows, swirling and morphing into grotesque shapes that seemed to claw at the night. Their movements mirrored the cloaked figures, fluid and disconcerting, like dark water flowing around boulders. "Stay together!" Paul shouted again, his voice fighting to reach through the panic that enveloped the crowd. But more figures were coming, some from the left, others from the right. A sickly, sweet smell wafted toward him, mingling with the damp, earthy scent of the forest. It made his stomach churn. "Maggie!" he yelled, scanning for her among the throngs of terrified faces. She was still by his side, eyes wide, reflecting the swirling chaos. "Can you rally them?" "We need. I'm on it," she replied, meeting his intensity with a firm nod. The confidence in her voice steadied him, and he felt a fire ignite within him once more. Raven's voice echoed through the clearing, now a sinister chant merging with the growls of the beasts. "You think you can fight what you don't understand? You are merely stepping stones in a larger game. Then let us change the game." Paul shouted back, feeling the passion of the townsfolk amplify his strength. He raised his hand to the crowd, urging them to gather close. "We know the truth. They thrive on our fear, our despair. If we stand together, we'll push back." Around him, murmurs rippled through the gathered crowd. They looked at each other, eyes questioning, the weight of uncertainty growing heavy, and then he felt it, a pulse of energy stronger than before, a primordial force gathering in his chest. It thrummed through his veins, coursing toward his fingertips. He closed his eyes, envisioning the essence of their town, every joyful scream, every sob, every hard-fought victory. It all melded into a single thought: they belonged here. "Now!" he yelled, opening his eyes wide, letting the light burst from his palm again. Only this time, it was joined by others. The townsfolk began to shine as they drew strength from his energy, sparks of light erupting around them as they faced the encroaching shadows. The snarls from the dark figures faltered, hesitating in the face of this unexpected unity. Paul felt the connection binding them, weaving through the air like tendrils of smoke. It was tangible, almost electrifying. And just like that, the tide shifted. "Fight!" Maggie called, raising her weapon high as a beacon. "It's now or never." Fueled by her urgency, people began to shout, brandishing their arms and weapons, a chorus of defiance soaring through the air. The monsters hesitated, bewildered by the surge of zeal erupting from the humans who stood against them. Then, like a dark storm, the cloaked figures pressed onward, rushing forward to reclaim their power. Paul felt a surge of dread, but it would be no more than a gust against the rising tide. Hold steady. Focus our light. Paul shouted, battling against the encroaching dread with every ounce of strength he had. As he directed their shared energy, the very ground trembled. A bright flash erupted from their collective force, driving back the advancing shadows momentarily. Paul could see through the shimmer of light that the beast paused, snarling in confusion, its jagged teeth gleaming ominously. But in that brief moment, something strange occurred. Past the thrumming darkness, deeper than anything they had fought before, a crack opened in the very fabric of reality. The shadows pulsed violently as if a great hunger lurked just behind them. What the hell is that? Dean's voice broke through, a mixture of fear and disbelief. Paul's heart pounded. He didn't understand what lay beyond. But one thing was clear, they were facing a darkness that wasn't just of this world. Whatever it is, we must hold the line. He yelled, desperation climbing with the weight of the unknown. Then, as if in response to their rally, the crack widened, revealing bright, swirling colors beyond an invitation, yet a threat, tempting them with what lay on the other side. Could they fight this new devouring force, or would the shadows consume them once and for all? And just like that, Paul felt the threads of reality start to fray. What would they find beyond the dark embrace? The night was far from over, and a new battle loomed ahead. A heavy silence filled the air, broken only by the choking growls of the encroaching shadows. Paul could feel the tension coiling tighter in his chest as he glanced at the townsfolk around him. Their faces were a mixture of determination and fear, but they were visibly stronger together. The radiant energy flowing from their linked hands seemed to battle against the oppressive darkness. Everyone, focus! Paul shouted, pushing against the encroaching despair. Remember why we're here, what's at stake. The light seemed to pulse with each heartbeat, resonating with their resolve. The shadows hesitated, swirling violently yet searching for an opening. Paul felt the hunger behind that crack, a gnawing dread that twisted his stomach and filled his mind with a mixture of horror and intrigue. Can you feel it? Maggie breathed, her eyes darting toward the rippling colors. It's like it's alive, we must not let it take hold. Paul replied, forcing his voice to steady. The crowd needed to hear certainty. He took a breath, inhaling the damp scent of the forest, washing away some of the fear gripping him. Together, we can push it back. It's just a ruse, a trick to unnerve us. With every word, Paul felt the energy revitalize. Banding together felt like electricity in the air, crackling with hope, igniting their shared resolve. He clenched his fists, willing the others to absorb the strength emanating from the bright burst of unity. Suddenly, from the depths of the crack, a figure emerged. It moved slowly at first, gliding with an eerie grace that sent shivers down their spines. The light flickered as if it too were afraid of what might come next. This entity bore no form they recognized, its shifting body morphed and reformed, radiating pure malevolence. Come, mortals, a voice boomed, laughter swirling with malice. You cannot comprehend the depths from which I arise. All your trivial struggles mean nothing to the void. A shockwave rippled through the townsfolk. Several staggered back, murmuring doubts now bubbling to the surface like glass shards cutting through flesh. Stand firm. Paul cried out again, his own resolve trembling as he felt that ancient darkness. This is what we've been fighting against. We must face it. But how? Dean yelled, panic creeping into his words. What does it want? We can't fight that. Maggie stepped forward, her weapon unwavering despite the quaking earth beneath her feet. It's not just fear we face. It's despair and hopelessness. If we give in to it, it will claim us. The darkness surged again, trying to penetrate their light, but Paul felt an answer brewing deep within him. It was hidden in the shadows, coursing through his veins, a truth he had uncovered once but had long since buried. We cannot allow this force to dictate our fate. Paul shouted, his voice ringing clearer. What if it feeds on us because we feel we're less than we are? What if we challenge that belief? What if we refuse to let it win? He looked around and, as if ignited by his words, the crowd pulsed with renewed energy. People began to chant, voices harmonizing like an anthem rising against the shadows. They were tired of being haunted, tired of being victims in a game they didn't understand, but just as hope flared once again, the abyssal figure surged forward, twisting and writhing, preparing to display its ultimate horror. Paul's heart raced. He needed to act fast. What would their choice be in the face of such profound darkness? Could they truly reclaim their power, or were they already too late? The swirling colors beckoned, a void taunting their very essence. And amidst that chaos, as everything trembled on the brink, the whispers came from deep within the heart of the crack, a promise and a warning, both horrifying and exhilarating. What truth lay behind it, and would it lead them to salvation or death? The darkness lunged. Paul's heart thudded painfully in his chest, each beat resonating with the fear rippling through the crowd. The shadowy figure twisted and expanded, devouring the light flickering around it. Those chanting beside him faltered as their voices began to wane, uncertainty dripping into their resolve. "Do not look away," Paul bellowed, forcing themselves to focus. "Stand your ground. We can't let it take our hope." The ground trembled beneath their feet as the entity formed a large, undulating mouth, overflowing with jagged teeth that glimmered with a sinister hunger. A low growl emanated, echoing through the trees with an unsettling familiarity like the voice of their worst fears. Maggie's grip tightened on her weapon, eyes wide, reflecting the terror engulfing them all. "What if it devours us from within?" A collective gasp rippled through the townsfolk, and Paul felt a debilitating wave of dread sweep over him. It gripped at him, encasing him in ice. "Listen!" he shouted, breaking the spell of fear. This is a trick. It's trying to make us doubt ourselves." As if sensing his proclamation, the darkness recoiled slightly, a quiver of uncertainty passing through its form under the weight of Paul's conviction. It twitched and writhed as if feeding off their despair wasn't enough anymore. "Dig deeper," Paul urged, voice strained yet fervent. "Remember your strength. Remember your families. We fight for life, for love." With renewed determination, the townsfolk closed their eyes for a brief moment, pausing to summon the memories that fueled their hope. One by one, they envisioned what they were fighting for, glimmers of joy amidst the oppressive gloom. Paul focused, his thoughts swirling with the warmth of shared bonds. Suddenly, he gleaned a clearer resolution, a moment of pure clarity cutting through the chaos. "It's not just fear we're fighting, it's also the lies we've been told. The fear of being worthless." The figure paused, a flicker of confusion sparking within its void-like eyes. It released a screech that reverberated through the trees, an unholy wail that caught the townsfolk in its grasp. "Together!" Paul roared, thrusting his hands into the air and drawing energy from the collective light they created. "We are worth fighting for. We are enough." The ground surged beneath them, the darkness beginning to peel away like old paint in the face of their unity. With each rhythm of their chants, the colors blazed brightly, dancing like fireflies among the oppressive shadows, but the entity lashed out with terrifying ferocity, an explosion of shadows erupting, twisting and turning all around. Paul could feel the darkness trying to sink teeth into him, gnawing at the edges of his bravery. The heat of their collective light kept the creature at bay, but not without a fight. "Keep pushing," Maggie urged, her voice steady yet strained. "We can't let it silence us." A tremor shook the ground, scattering leaves and dirt as the embodiment of despair hardened its form, bulging in anger. It seemed to draw breath, swelling larger, ready to strike. "Don't shy away from the truth," Paul declared, his voice rich with conviction. "There is power in our pain. We will not fade into oblivion." Then, from the heart of that swirling turmoil came a flash, a flicker of blinding light surged forward, merging with their united chants. The juxtaposition of light and dark twisted into a mesmerizing spectacle. And just as hope surged, Paul caught a glimmer of something deeper within the shadows, an echo of forgotten memories flickering at the edges of his consciousness. It was a truth he had tried to bury, something about himself that threatened to unravel the little certainty he had left, gripping Maggie's hand as the colors pulsed around them. He could only wonder what would happen when they unveiled that hidden truth. Would it be the key to their salvation or the very thing that broke them apart? As the entity squared off against the combined force of those united, the air crackled with a potent mixture of fear and exhilaration. Would they unlock their greatest strength, or would the shadows consume all? The final showdown loomed, the darkness swirling closer, as the air filled with uncertainty. But Paul knew something had to give. What terrible truths would they expose, and at what cost? The ground trembled violently as the creature surged forward, its inky form expanding like a dark wave crashing upon a beach. Paul felt the heat of their united light flicker beneath the onslaught. Fear gripped him tight, threatening to turn his resolve into wet paper. But he was not alone. The townsfolk rallied beside him, their voices intertwining into a chorus of defiance. "Stand strong. Don't let it take you," he shouted, every word a desperate prayer. Paul could hear their hearts beating as one, a collective thrum that pushed back against the oncoming abyss. But the darkness was relentless. It lashed out, striking at their fears, morphing into twisted shapes, faces of lost loved ones, memories of failures, unrelenting doubt. Each twist cut deeper, and for a moment, he feared he might surrender to it, might let the pain take him whole. "Maggie!" he yelled, voice raw, "What's our anchor? What do we hold on to?" She met his gaze, eyes glistening with fierce resolve. "We hold on to each other. Our memories. Everything we are still fighting for." With those words echoing in his mind, Paul called upon everyone to remember. They formed a circle, light spilling from their clasped hands like molten gold. He could feel the warmth, the energy thrumming beneath his fingertips. The bond was unbreakable. Suddenly, the dark entity jerked back, a loud shriek slicing through the night. Its eyes, if you could call the void's eyes, seemed to narrow in fury, and it pulsed with rage. "You think you can stop me? You are just echoes of your own shame. Worthless." Paul's stomach twisted as the words pierced through the gathered strength. The shadow began to engulf them, feeding off the despair like a leech. "Don't listen," he commanded, pushing back against the rising tide of hopelessness. "Every one of us is worth more than this. We have the power of our truth." He focused, drawing from deep within, and what surfaced pierced through the darkness, a name whispered from his past, hidden secrets buried tight. The truth settled on his chest like lead, but he grabbed hold of it. "I am more than my scars," he shouted. "I am fear and hope, pain and love." The shadow recoiled, a flicker of uncertainty running through its twisted body. In that moment, Paul's voice rang clear, joining with the townsfolk, and they surged forward. "Push it back. Push it all the way back." As they pushed against the darkness, it cracked, fissures spreading like lightning bolts through its form. But deeper inside, something deeper was at stake, his own truth waiting to be unearthed. "That's it." Maggie cheered, "You're touching it. Pull it out." Paul clenched his fists, feeling the heaviness of vulnerability coursing through him. What happened if he laid bare his truth? Would it shatter their resolve or solidify it? While fighting against the dark, he had built walls, convinced himself that the past didn't matter. But the shadows knew better. They fed on the things he refused to acknowledge. He stepped forward, letting the flickering light envelop him, battling against his own fears. "I have been a slave to my own fears." The words broke free. "I am a slave to my own doubts." The crowd gasped, eyes widening in horror. In their fear, they felt a shift. It was as if he had unearthed a shared burden. Just then, the darkness surged again, rage spilling forth in a furious tide. "You think that is power? What you've shown is weakness. You are nothing without your lies." Paul felt the heaviness rise within him, but instead of collapsing, a flicker of courage ignited. Everything he had hidden away, every moments of shame, became part of the light. "And if I am nothing, then I am everything too," he shouted, raising his voice until it echoed off the trees. We all are. Even as the shadows lashed out, a brilliance began to swell, mixing despair with defiance. Would this tangled path of truth lead to their salvation, or would it reveal a greater horror? In that moment, just as the light began to burst forth, Paul wondered, had they unlocked something too powerful to be contained? Had they opened a door that might not offer salvation, but plagued them with the horrors they thought buried forever? As the battle raged, the night thickened with urgency. With darkness swirling around them, one truth remained: the greatest fight had only just begun. The ground trembled like it couldn't decide which way to sway as the darkness howled, a ravenous beast upset by their newfound defiance. Paul felt the heat radiating from the townsfolk around him, their energy more palpable than ever, a warm reminder of their shared hope. The darkness pulsed, and its rage only fueled them, igniting an unyielding determination. What now? Someone whispered, anxiety threading through the circle. The light had surged momentarily, but the darkness couldn't be satisfied. It circled them like a predator, hungry for their fear, ready to swallow them whole. Stay together, Paul shouted, trying to lock in their courage as the shadows twisted and crawled. Face it head on. We won't back down. The word struck a chord, rallying their hearts to a singular beat. Just then, the creature lunged forward, and the air thickened with despair. It morphed, shifting from shadow to ugly memories, faces freezing in horror, laughter turned to screams. Paul's heart hammered harder, a primal fear gripping him, the memories like knives digging in. Then Maggie stepped closer, her eyes fierce. Paul! She cried, what is the truth you need to confront? The darkness surged, feeding off their collective hesitation. You are shackled by your past. It screeched, the voice a slithering hiss, echoing in their minds. What have you done to deserve light? In that moment, the weight of vulnerability threatened to crush him. The ghost of silence loomed like a heavy shroud. Paul's breaths came quick and shallow. What truth would emerge? What scars would bleed? A single word, barely a whisper, clawed its way to the surface. I failed. His voice broke, but he pressed on, emboldened by the flickering lights around him. I failed when my parents needed me. I failed when I chose my fears over my family. The townsfolk recoiled, wide eyes reflecting shock. Their murmurs filled the air like frantic whispers. But Paul pressed, feeling lightness begin to break through the dark. I let shame and anger build walls. I'm not just my fears. I've become a slave to them. With those words, the shadows shivered, momentarily taken aback. Beneath their own pain, the townsfolk found a connection in his honesty. They began echoing his confessions, a symphony of shared burdens. Me too. One voice cried. I've let my past define me. Yes. Someone else shouted. Together, we are stronger. The combined light exploded into a brighter blaze, pushing back against the consuming tide. The darkness shrieked, a sound so visceral it felt like nails dragging over slate. It writhed, the forms contorting into grotesque images that flickered in and out, doubt giving way to clarity, fear melting into rage that burned with truth. Keep going. Maggie urged, her voice unwavering. This is working. But with every new revelation, the darkness grew angrier, its howling mingling with the fierce resolve rising among the townsfolk. It unleashed waves of dread, the very fears they had just confronted raging in retaliation. Paul felt the terror creeping back in, but this time, the weight sat less heavily. These truths, he gasped, they don't define us. They liberate us. As he spoke, threads of light stretched further and brighter, illuminating the fears beneath the surface. The monster writhed with fury, shadows swirling thicker, and he knew they were getting closer. It was a battle, not just against the entity, but against all the things they had allowed to hold them hostage. The energy pulsed and reverberated, shaking the earth itself. And right as hope surged around him, Paul recognized the turning point, the moment they embarked on a deeper truth, one that might spiral out of control. then something extraordinary rumbled from within the heart of the darkness. Paul's blood ran cold. "What is happening?" He shouted over the din.as. The light flickered and fought for dominance. A new sound broke through a roar echoing from the abyss, deep and primal. Without warning, another shadow cerulean and massive erupted into existence behind the darkness, an entity unlike anything they had encountered before. Had they disturbed something else, something even more sinister lying in wait? "Hold your ground!" Paul shouted, voice trembling with fear and disbelief. But the question thundered in the back of his mind: had they opened a door to something beyond their control? The battle was far from over, and the true enemy had only just revealed itself. As the two forces collided, the radiant light of unity and the darkness of despair, the battle escalated into a tumultuous storm. The air crackled with energy, each pulse vibrating with the tension of unresolved emotions. Paul's heart raced as the massive cerulean figure emerged, its presence dwarfing the shadows and threatening the fabric of reality itself. "Stay together!" Paul shouted again, his voice pushing against the swirling chaos. "We can't let fear shatter our resolve. We will face whatever comes." The townsfolk hesitated for a moment, doubt whispering in their ears, but the spark ignited by Paul's bravery held them steady. They formed a tighter circle, their lights intertwining, casting away the shadows inching closer. "Connect with each other," Maggie urged, stepping forward, her voice ringing clear. "Remember everything we're fighting for." In that moment, the darkness surged around them, twisting into memories of loss and pain. Faces of loved ones appeared, their expressions frozen in torment, trying to pull them into the abyss. "Do not look away," Paul yelled, shaking off the ghosts of regret clinging to him. "Remember your worth. Remember where we've been and the strength we've found in each other." The crowd surged with resilience as they mirrored his intensity. Each confession of burden and pain rippled through the air, infusing the energy between them. "I am not my mistakes," cried out a woman. "I am stronger than my fears," shouted another. With each voice echoing Paul's truth, the cerulean figure seemed momentarily shaken, light bursting forth from the foundation of their united hearts. The darkness twisted and shrieked, a cacophony of rage reverberating through the trees. Paul pushed forward, his voice bolstered by their collective truths. "We are not slaves to our past. We will not be devoured by this darkness." Just as the shadows recoiled, Paul felt a tremor beneath his feet, a response to their defiance. The cerulean being expanded, taking on a form less monstrous and more ethereal, a shimmering reflection of the energy surrounding them. What is this?" The voice resonated, a mixture of curiosity and disbelief. "This is our light," Paul declared, his arms outstretched as the radiant energy surged forward. "This is not just our past. This is our present and our future." With that, every fear, every shadow began to dissipate into the night. The cerulean entity merged with their light, thrumming with vibrancy as the shadows that held it faltered. Peace filled the air, washing over the townsfolk as they grasped the significance of their strength together, and just like that, something extraordinary happened: the darkness began to shatter. Each crack released a brilliant light that shimmered through the clearing. The breath of relief stirred the earth beneath them. They had collectively unearthed a deeper truth, a truth that illuminated the very darkness they had been facing. Suddenly, the fear that had once threatened to consume them fell away, replaced by an invigorating sense of hope and empowerment. The cerulean light pulsated brightly, hinting at the boundless possibilities that lay ahead. Paul felt his heart's song echo through the air, ringing with the truth of who they were. "Together, we are enough," he shouted, feeling the weight of liberation. The shadows began to recede, leaving behind only flickers of what had once been. And in that moment, the cerulean light erupted in a dazzling showcase of colors, a sign of victory washing over the town. They had faced the darkness within and had emerged stronger, a testament that together, they could conquer anything. As the first light of dawn began to break over the horizon, the townsfolk stood united, their hearts nearly bursting with the weight of a new beginning. Paul turned to Maggie, and their eyes locked, an understanding formed between them, shared laughter amidst the relief. They had faced the abyss, chewed through the chains, and had come out fighting. The darkness was not a master of their fate, it was a reminder of their strength. Paul took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the sun's embrace, the whispers of hope fluttering in their souls. This was the moment they had reclaimed their lives, no longer shadows haunted by the past but lights shining brightly for the world to see. "Let us go home," he said softly, and as they turned to leave, a collective cheer erupted, echoing through the woods, a still budding freedom taking root in every heart, and in the distance, as the first rays of sunlight washed over the town, everyone knew they wouldn't let fear bind them again. They had uncovered the truth, and now they were free. But before closing the door on this chapter, I need you to act. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on what's coming next. Exclusive stories await you. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and motivate more thrilling content. And flood the comments with your reactions and theories about Paul's journey. What did you think of the ending? Finally, don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support is what drives this community forward.